Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to my first impressions of Gears of War 5 for the PC. Yeah, you're looking at it right. This is Gears of War. It looks kind of open, doesn't it? No, this is not some vehicle segment in a campaign. This is most of what you're going to see in the game. Open world, except there's going to be another color palette swap a little bit before this. So, this is Act 3. There are 4 acts in the game. I am almost done with the game. I think I have maybe 3.5 more hours to go. Maybe 4. There are usually 5 acts in a Gears game. There's 4 here, and there's less chapters, but they last a little bit longer each. Unfortunately, what that kind of tells me is that, well, we have less level variety. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to have them in this backdrop of an open world, so that you can soak up some more time. So essentially, you have a linear series, a series that is known well for having linear missions, because they have good enemy placement, enemy variety, pacing, item placement, design, everything, and you're instead basically cutting it down to 3, maybe 4 different areas in total, 2 of which you're going to be spending hours upon hours in, seeing the same things over and over again. And you've added this open world area that just feels so empty and so useless. So as you can tell, I'm not too thrilled with the way they've taken the game. Now, I never liked Gears of War 4 that much. I felt that the multiplayer was alright, but the campaign was painful. The first part of that game was great, and it's the exact same thing with this game. First part, amazing. Now, Gears of War 4 was great. The first part was because it had nothing to do with the new characters, who are insufferable. It had to do with, like, a flashback. And you kind of played through the best of Gears of War 1 and 3, and then you played, like, a Pendulum Wars, I think, a prequel mission as well. But then once you got into the actual game, you know, you're thinking you're getting excited, because, like, oh, you're going to see all your old favorite characters, and it's going to be like Star Wars, where they kind of, speaking of Star Wars, you know, like, this is, like, I mean, come on. Anyway. So, you know, you're thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna see my old favorite characters, and we're gonna see like, okay, these characters are like the sons or the daughters or whatever, and I'm going on the wrong way, I think. And, I don't know, you're gonna grow to like these characters, and these are gonna be like the new generation. But, that didn't happen. These characters were, in Gears of War 4, some of the most insufferable characters ever. The writing was piss poor. They felt like vending machines that would just blather out dialogue. There was barely any characterization. One character would be like the helpless one in one cutscene, and the other, and they would just play musical chairs the whole fucking game. It was terrible. And what was worse is that, like, when you got to the halfway point, like, you were just in kind of like the same area, but just slightly different scenery for like 3 hours. You felt like you were doing the same thing for like 3 or 4 hours. It was so damn repetitive, and then as soon as like you finished the first act, it was like just fighting generic robots. There was a lot wrong with that game, and then the ending was like probably one of the biggest fuck yous ever. So this game makes a lot of the same mistakes. Now, it is a little bit better. In some cases, a lot better. So the first act is, of course, amazing, just like the previous game. But it's because the dialogue is actually good. It's not because you're playing some kind of nostalgic trip mission, which is nice. It means that the game is relying on its own, its new roots rather than its old ones. It's not using nostalgia. It'd be like going to the new Star Wars movie and saying, like, oh, it was really great because I saw Mark Hamill. It's like, well, what about the other characters? Like, no, they kind of sucked. Like, well, then it's not a good movie, and this is like, they're never gonna make good movies if they can't stand on their own new writing material. So, the first act is, like, amazing. Reminds you of Gears of War 2's, like, urban areas in the beginning of that game. The dialogue between characters is actually really funny. There's, like, characterization, like, good characterization for each character. JD, the main character from the previous game, you're now playing, Kate, for, reasons significant to the story. JD is, like, very, JD's character in this game is a little bit too headstrong, but he's got his heart in the right place. And then you have Dell over here, who's actually a lot more sympathetic. That's kind of indicated in a cutscene with this robot right here. And then you have Kate, who's kind of, well, she's a little bit interesting. But the point is that they're not as bland and as similar as before, and they're a little bit more fleshed out this time around. So characters, a little bit more fleshed out. Game stands on its own at the beginning. Then you get to the ice level. The fucking ice level in this game. The promo material loves to just jerk off over this special, like, level. You have this open world, alright? This open ice world where you can do all these, like, quests and stuff, I guess. But you kind of don't care, because it's all just the same stuff. And what's worse is that, like, you know, driving that, like, skidmobile over there is actually fun, but the dialogue goes from, like, being funny and, like, neat to, like, just terrible. It's the same problem with Gears of War 4, the endless vending machine talk. Like, pointless, stupid questions. I can't even think of a good one off the top of my head, but it's just pointless, annoying questions. Painfully unfunny attempts at humor. Poorly placed level design, like, you feel like you're just going back and forth, like you're doing errands. You're doing chores. Ugh, it's just repetitive, and this level, not that much better. And what's really worse is that, like, you have started the game, and you played that awesome first act, and you're thinking, oh my god, 9 out of 10, man, this is gonna be the best Gears game ever. And you play it, and it sucks after that act. It sucks so bad. So, what you've got here is a typical Gears game, but still not as good as 2. So you don't have the pacing, you don't have the visceral, this, I guess you can call it, of the previous games like Gears 2, where when you just cut someone in half, you can just see the blood going all over your screen. There is some blood here, but it's still not as pronounced. When you... I mean, you do have good enemy variety, but, you know, I mean, these things are just tickers, right? They just run a little bit differently. Tickers were, like, more, like, smaller, and they didn't jump around, so I don't know, maybe they are an improvement. I just thought the tickers and their sounds were kind of more iconic than, these. They're just juvies with explosives on them. They're not cool like the wretches were. Even though they're desperately trying to make them like that. Weren't as fun to kill either. Although sometimes they can be fun with these little rushes. But it's kind of the same thing they did with wretches. The other thing is that when you down some enemies, if they had like... If they were like beyond repair, let's say, like their actual legs like came off or whatever, and they were on the ground crawling, you would see like giant trails of blood. Or if you died, like there would be, you know, there's some like cool death impacts, and there's some decent animations here, like especially with this claw gun right here. I actually like dug this into a locust or a swarm, excuse me. I dug this into their back when they were on the ground, and like when I pulled it out, like their fucking back basically came out. You know, there's cool stuff in here, but the gameplay, the gunplay is arguably not as good, but the physics, when, you know, you hit something, it just doesn't sound as good. It doesn't feel like you're tearing through flesh. It sounds psychopathic to say, but it's true. And, you know, the game looks nice, but, like, there's no, I guess the word is soul to it? There's no soul to it, like, at least that much. I mean, there's cool little replacements to, or substitutes, I should say, to what we used to have. Alright, let's turn this thing off. So, one of the main mechanics is now that Jack can be upgraded. You get him back, by the way, from the previous games. And it's cool, you can get these little power cores, and they added to, like, these RPG elements in the game right here. So, you can have these little abilities. You have these passives. And by the way, if you have a second player, he or she can play as Jack, which is pretty neato. And it looks like it's going to be Del and Kate the entire game, so, you know, get used to them. But anyway, you got Hijack, which takes controls enemies, Cloak, which I'll show you in a bit, Stim, health boost. You're also going to need these to get through some of the environments in this game. No, I don't mean like, oh yeah, you can't go to this area yet, so you have to get Jack's ability to come back and do it. You know, you have to find it out on your own. Like, no, it's not like that. At least so far. The secondary objectives can be just beaten without anything else in the area. No need to make it different or interesting here. No need to experiment. Just go through the motions, which is fine, because that's what Gears kind of is a little bit all about. I might be pissing some people off by saying that, but it is kind of always been like that. But that's why you don't do it in an open world. Like, the whole point of an open world is to, like, have that necessary need to explore and, like, experiment and do things that, like, you might regret doing. Like, going all the way over there and finding out, like, oh, these enemies are too high level, or doing this and finding out, oh, you don't have the item to get there yet, but you kind of mark it on your map for later. It's something you hold on to. This is just a crappy backdrop to sell, people on playing it more, I guess? I don't know. I mean, I was gonna say sell more copies, but then again, who the hell wants open world in a Gears of War game? Doesn't make any sense! Oh. Okay, we're gonna go to the rocket hangar, and we're going to progress the mission in this act. So let's get right to it. And of course, you know, you can't just go in there and, like, you know, have guns or whatever on this thing. You just kind of just walk in. There's no vehicle combat segments as of yet. There's, like, one kind of turret segment later in here. I've already beaten some of this. There's, like, some kind of stealth in there, too. Like, you can just kind of get the drop them, or that can happen. Whatever. Here's the cloaking mechanic. Let's just, there we go. Not as good as Mass Effect. So, like I was saying before, you got your allies, and you've always kind of had that in Gears for co-op. The previous act, it was just 2 people, and now it's 4. So, like I said before, Gears of War 4 dialogue, insufferable. Started to happen again with the second act when you're only with Del. The only difference is that instead of 3 insufferable idiots nattering off, it's 2 insufferable idiots and a robot. I feel like there's, like, a big team working on, like, with some good writers working on, like, the opening, and then, like, the first act, and then as soon as, like, the second act stopped, they're like, alright, I'm gonna head out, and then they just decided not to write anymore, and then they let the interns who wrote Gears 4 do all the writing. It's just really, really frustrating. I guess we recruited this guy to help us fight here, but I don't know, there's not much point in doing, like, the open world areas. Like, I mean, sometimes you get some cool dialogue from doing them, but a lot of it's insufferable, so who cares? The shooting will never be as good as Gears of War 2 in terms of, like, pacing, level design, and, like, visceralness. I mean, yeah, you got some better sound effects. You got Dolby Atmos 7.1, and, by the way, if you want to see, like, lengthy review of, like, the options menu and the graphics and all that, you can check out my PC port review of that link. It's like 20 minutes long, but there's a lot of information on it, which includes the lack of split screen on PC. You can do it on campaign, but you can't do it in Versus or Escape yet. I don't know. This is a press copy. Currently I'm playing where pretty much everyone at this point who bought the Ultimate Edition has access to it, so I don't know where it is. Again, this is about the single-player campaign. I have an interest in multiplayer, but I really want to play that with friends, so I'm not going to be really doing anything on that. I just wanted to talk about the single player because after being disappointed with Gears of War 4 and having some expectation for Gears 5, I was thinking, like, you know, maybe it'll be a little bit better. And you know, it kind of is. It's not bad. The shooting still feels alright, arguably a little bit better. The story, I'd say, is pretty good. When it, you know, gets going.
That's it. They're done.
It adds some interesting lore to the universe. You don't feel like every mission is just a backdrop for the gameplay. It can also be used to enhance the lore a little bit. Like walking around in Gears Cities areas, seeing civilians. You know, it's not bad. But a lot of people would just say, like, well, I just want to play the video game. I want to do the shooty bang bang. And that's fine. I sympathize with that. If you want the story, you should just read the comics or the books. But then again, that canon has always been kind of messed up since Gears 3 ended. So, yeah.
It's gotta have a mission control. Or command.
I mean, I've been talking to some people who have, like, you know, gotten into the expanded universe, and, there's nothing super offensive about this story so far, unlike Gears 4, which kind of had to be explained here. The Anya fertility thing was kind of a curveball to a lot of people. She was like sterilized, and then all of a sudden she can have kids. I don't.
Another door. Help me.
It's a little bit weird. So yeah, when the characters aren't nattering off, you have serviceable gameplay. And you know, before I really just get to my conclusion here, my point, Gears of War 5 feels like, oh, this is cool, but kind of game. You know, it's the biggest but. You know, you've got serviceable gameplay. Good, in fact, but not as good as Gears 2. You got an interesting story, but only if you're into the game's lore up until this point. You won't know a lot of this stuff until you played Gears 2, and the character dialogue is sometimes insufferable. You've got some good levels, but there's this horrible open-world backdrop going around. It's really boring. These are the little upgrades right here. We can just give Jack some passives right here. Jack can remain cloaked while carrying a weapon. Ooh, neat. The third player would probably be a little bit more interested in that. It's just a little bit above average. I'd say if I gave Gears of War's 4's, again, this is for single player. If I gave its single player campaign, let's say a 5.5 out of 10, maybe a 6 on a good day, I give this game 6.5 overall. I mean, that opening was so good, but they had to ruin it with that awful ice level, and that was the majority of the game. That was the big part. And now I feel like, well, you had this crazy good level, and now you had this borderline insufferable mediocre level that got a little bit better on the final chapter. Excuse me, chapter. That got a little bit better on the final chapter. But, other than that, you're dealing with a pretty mediocre game, and I just don't think that's acceptable for something that's like $60. It's this Xbox One exclusive, which is also on PC. And it just kind of sucks. I mean, Xbox One orders have been getting, what, Crackdown 3, which was a mess. You have Sea of Thieves, which felt like a bunch of deception in there. And then Gears 4, which wasn't that great. Gears of War Ultimate Edition. And all these games were on PC anyway, so it just didn't feel like it mattered in the end. And then Halo's coming now, too, so it just kind of feels like Xbox owners got shafted, and Microsoft really hasn't been on the ball with these exclusive titles, these AAA titles. There's just some problem with all of them. I'd say this is the least offensive one so far. But it's not that great. If you like multiplayer, there's lots of options there. You got the escape mode, the map editor, the horde mode, and the versus mode. But if you're looking at it to get the single-player campaign, I'd look for a sale first. You might find some fun playing online or split screen, but I wouldn't drop $60 just for the campaign. But the value from the other modes might really help out there. Alright guys, anyway, that is it for me. Gears 5, Gears of War 5, whatever you want to call it. Available for $60 on the Windows 10 Store and Steam. Get the Steam version. You can get the digital copy, which will give you a copy on Xbox One, which does give you the split screen for all the modes, but then you gotta play it on Xbox One. So just get the PC version on Steam for convenience if you want. Windows Store version usually gets a little bit cheaper, though. And most keys you get from third-party sites, those will be Windows Store keys, usually. So be careful of that. You don't want to buy something for $60 and then find out it's not a Steam key and then not be able to get a refund. Alright. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.